Marhaba and how's it going, everyone? For those who are new to the show, this is Yuwab, a space dedicated to have answers, to calm your mind, empowering your workplace, and trust me, eventually it will leave you in a great state of mind to unlock your full potential. I'm your host, Saeed Alghafri, and let me express how much I am grateful for having you here and you allocating the time to hear me out. This topic is very dear to me. يعني wallahi, I don't know what to say, but it's one of the topics that I really admire, which is self-awareness. It's really one of the crucial yet challenging skills. And if you really want to grow, you can't without this. Really you can't. يعني ما أعرف شو أقول بس really self-awareness is undermined. It's very important. And why it's difficult? Because really we can't see ourselves very clearly. I'm speaking to you right now, but I can't notice my body gestures, my body language, and the way I'm reacting. And even my face expression is very important because people look at you when you speak. And sometimes your face doesn't show what you're speaking about. And I get that a lot. Most of the people, they come look at my face and they think that I am really not in the mood. But again, that's my face expression. And I need to work on it. So in this episode, we will explore what it takes to cultivate self-awareness in our life. And you're going to walk away with, number one is, what really is self-awareness and its types. And the second one is why it's so important. And when you think self-awareness, think emotional intelligence. And the third one is how can we uncover that box of mysterious discoveries, Because at the end of the day, we're all full of surprises. And the way I look at it is we're just a box of mystery when it comes to self-awareness. And you're gonna know what I mean about it. And when you do that, the fourth one is why it's so hard to cultivate self-awareness. Why it's so hard to basically get that shock in the beginning when you hear that. And then the last one is how can we cultivate that over time? Yeah. Now, I have been very fortunate to coach amazing clients and even work with amazing employees in where I work today. And when I basically coach people, the first question is do you really know yourself? Before we go and start about their goals, their actions, and what they need to do. It's very important. And then the obvious answer, and it's really funny, of course, they tell me, are you kidding? Yes, we know who we are, and we don't need you to tell us who we are. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Let's see. What I do first is I send out like a sheet for values and for goals. And I receive a first draft. And I look at it and I call that person and I tell him, listen, this is your first draft. And what I'm expecting is now and future. And they say, okay, now I understand. They come back with something else. So the second draft that I get is they are aspiring to what they want to be. If you know what I'm saying. Now, if you want to go there, naturally you will have to know yourself first, and then you are going to be able to make steps to reach where you are. I remember when I did my first assessment, I came as I'm very aggressive. When I speak to people, when I talk to them, it feels as if I am basically aggressive, but I don't mean that. My goal at that time was I want to come and I want to land with that other person nicely. So when I receive the second draft with my clients is we go through the sessions and we discover many things. And oh my God, they'll be like, shoot, I missed that. So the idea here is most people and majority of the people think that they know who they are. But in actual fact is they don't know. They don't know who they are. And that's the most important thing. Why is that? Because we all have blind spots. Now, think of a car. You really cannot drive a car without the windows, like the rear window and the side windows. I remember one time I was in Paris and I was trying to drive, and someone stole the side mirrors. Trust me, it was a very difficult drive back to the city. So you can't. You need those mirrors because you're trying to see. These are all your blind spots when you basically do it. Now, that's the same when you are in stressful situations. You have feelings and you have emotions. And those are stuff that override when you are having a stressful situation. And as I mentioned, your body language, oh my God, they are really indicators of how you feel and your emotions. All right? So the first thing is we will have to define what self-awareness is and its types. And when I looked at self-awareness in the beginning, there are really different levels and complexities when it comes to that. But let's simplify a term. It's basically your character. So it's your character, your personality, same, and your feelings. That's it in a nutshell. Because at the end of the day, you are a human being and you are built out of values and behavior. And that's your character and that's your personality. And then you've got your feelings. Now, let's basically ask a question. Do we really know them? And if you recall my coaching exercises, maybe, and maybe not, And anything in life, anything, when you are interacting with people or anything, you start with receiving that thing. It could be a talk, it could be a word, it could be anything, it could be some news. What will happen is you're going to have to react. But before you react, when you hear that news, you will have a feeling. It could be mental or it could be a body sensation. That could be, you could be happy, you could be sad, you could be surprised, whatever the case is. And then you would start to have thoughts. And I'm going to talk about meditation in future episodes. Once you do that, all right, then you're going to react. Now, it depends on how self-aware you are. That could be kind of a knockout, because for those who love boxing, kind of a knockout reaction where it's really ugly. Or it could be a very resilient reaction. And that's what we need to have. So once we understand that, then it becomes manageable. So really things get complex when you receive information, and that's where things go inside. So your mindset is very critical during that moment. Yeah? Now, that's what I call internal self-awareness. So it's you. So everything that goes within yourself, feelings, behaviors, thoughts, sensations, character, that's your internal self-awareness. So that's one type. The second type is the external self-awareness. It could be anything else, not you. The environment, the room, maybe if you're on an airplane, the situation there, something that happens not within you, but it's basically an external thing. Or it could be a feedback from someone. And that's all external, that's kind of an external self-awareness. So from that, you basically have a specific effect into your internal behavior. Now, something that I see from external self-awareness is when someone gives you feedback, okay, or when anything happens, it really gets personal. And we don't like to hear that. It feels as if we've been criticized or someone is really stepping on us. And the way I look at it is, this is how other people see you. Now, How much are you receiving that feedback and what's your reaction? That's very important. And most of the time is, kind of when someone asks us for feedback, we need to be honest about it. We need to be very much legitimate about it. It's very important, really, to give that honest feedback and try not to be negative when someone is asking for feedback. Because at the end of the day, as someone who's receiving that external feedback, people see you most of the time and they observe how you react. You know, it's like seeing a movie. When you go see a movie, you see the actors and the actress doing the movie in front of you. And you basically start to give some feedback, you know, and that's normal and that's part of life. So that's self-awareness. Now, why it's so important? And you know, when I think self-awareness, the first thing that comes into my mind is emotional intelligence. And before I talk about that, what I observe from people is they really think about taking courses, taking some technical skill, and they really ignore self-awareness, or how can they improve themselves. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's really not important. You will see the smartest pants people in the room, but they really don't know how to basically read the room and then make an impactful message or communication. And that's the most important thing. You can be smart, but if you can't communicate it or read the room or the audience or deliver that message, it's not good. And I know a lot of people who talk, you know, all nonsense, but they deliver the message so well to the point that people trust them. But what they're saying is just all, you know, all nonsense. So you need to make an impact eventually. And that's why you need to have self-awareness. Now, the example is, if you are in a meeting today, and that's very important, even if you're knowledgeable, and someone disagrees with you, and most of the time people will disagree with you, even at home, you know, there are two ways you can approach that. If your feelings and thoughts are not regulated, the consequence isn't good. You're going to burst. All your argument, even though you know it, won't make sense to people. And then your reaction will be very defensive, and people will think that you don't know what you're talking about, although that you're smart and you know what you're talking about. And that's a missed opportunity for me. Imagine now your self-awareness is regulated. What will happen? You gain self-confidence first, because you know that something is happening with yourself, and you know that when people are disagreeing with you, this is what happens. You gain confidence, you're going to influence, and you're going to make a much more better decision. And that's emotional intelligence. And it's so beautiful. Without self-awareness, trust me, you cannot do any emotional intelligence. And we will talk about that in future episodes, because emotional intelligence for me, or empathy, they are really powerful when it comes to people when they go up their career. Now, how can you basically uncover that box of mystery? You know, we're all having that stuff. And the way why I'm saying it, because when I look at self-awareness or feedback or assessment, I think we should look at it as surprises, or it's a nice surprise, not in a negative way. So there are ways on how to do it. First of all, when you look at the internal self-awareness, there are ways on how we can do it. The easiest way, but it's costly, and it's something that probably we have to invest in, is psychometric test, or any assessment out there that can really line up your behavior and your character. I've seen also online that there are stuff which are also free. But again, the things that that I have experienced are really do have a cost attached to that. So it's the easiest thing, and for me, it's a very good investment. And if you want to make it better, it's good to combine that with a coaching session, because the coaches that you work with, they understand how to read that report, because sometimes we don't know how to read that report. And I'm going to share with you my experience throughout my career. But again, it's really good to ease that time and have someone who can advise you on your psychometric test. The second thing is it could be kind of a mindfulness practice. It's very powerful, yet so difficult, and I'm going to talk about that when we look at it. So let's say you go through a meeting, okay? So what happens is that during the meeting, you observe what happened to you during that difficult moment. All right? And then you're going to have feelings, and then you're going to have a thought about it. And then you're going to have to react to that. So for me, I feel like this is very important and it's really good, but it's so difficult because after each incident, you'll have to basically regroup, sit down, understand what happened. And that takes me to the third one. And that's a free hack. You just need a pen and a paper for that. When you basically go through that situation, you sit down and you write about, you journal about it. And then you mention that, okay, I went through this situation. This is what happened to me. And that was my reaction. And then you say, like, in the future, I'm not going to do that. And these are the stuff, these are the, I would say, the labels that came from that situations, or the titles that come from it. So it could be like, I get really irritated when I hear that. I get excited when I hear that. I get a bit paranoid about it, or I get excited, or I became much more vocal when I heard it. So these are all stuff that you can label when you look at that. When you look at the external self-awareness, this is what they call 360 feedback. It could be paid. I mean, you can ask someone to do it for you. But again, I feel like if you have, let's say, 2 questions and then you share it with someone whom you can trust, who can give you feedback, people whom you interact with in meetings, etc., you can do that. And trust me, it's very valuable. But it's all about how you take that feedback. And that's the most important thing. There are some really, and the way I look at it, there are hidden gifts for you within that piece of paper when you receive that feedback. But it's all about how you read it. Now, let's say you get that feedback now. Self-assessment, internal self-assessment, and external self-assessment. Why it's so difficult to cultivate self-awareness? Now, let me share with you a story. I remember this very well. In 2012, I received my first feedback. It was an internal assessment. I did a psychometric test, and I received feedback from my colleagues at that time. Honestly, when I read it, immediately what happened to me is I started resisting, and I'm like, hell no, this is not me. And I started to basically resist, challenge within myself, and I ignored it. Honestly, I really ignored it. What happened that day is I went back home and I was driving, and I could not stop thinking about that feedback. Very painful. Yeah, wallah, I couldn't. I really couldn't. And I remember I went, when I'm really, at that time, during that period, when I'm stressed, I go for a run. And it was a very long run. And when I ran at that time, I was thinking about the whole feedback. And I had to self-criticize myself. And I was like, you know what, I'm not really worth it. Why this happened to me? I should do something about it. All these negative reactions and self-criticism when it comes to that. Very painful day. I think for 2 or 3 days, I really could not really think about anything accept that damn feedback. The good thing is what eased that process is that I had a coach, which came with that package, and he explained to me the feedback, and it wasn't that bad eventually. Like, it wasn't like things were bad and hell broke. No, I had something to work. I had some really good things happening in my personality, but there are stuff that I had to work on it. Let me tell you what happened. I could not get hold of the whole thing during that moment, and even after 3 days. I'll tell you what happened. 1 year after that, I looked at it, and it made absolute sense. It was like, yeah, this is me. And it was shocking, honestly, because I looked at it by surprise. So it's not like I planned that I would look at my feedback at that time, but I looked at it as a surprise. And I'm like, wow, this makes sense. That's me. Yeah, this is what I do during this situation. And I looked at it 5 years, and I'm like, you know what? That's absolutely me. But I improved a lot on these things, because I was like, yeah, I used to do this. Now I am better. Yeah, I used to do that. Now I'm better. You see what I'm saying? It's that mental blockage that really made you not look at your assessment very well and your feedback. And that happened to me. Now, after that, I did another test maybe 5 years after that. And the way I looked at it, completely different compared to the first one. I received that feedback very well. Not really well, but much better, like 50% better. And I started working on it. And I did one 3 years from now, like 3 years before, 3 years from today's date. And I loved it. The feedback I received in it is amazing. And again, I did one recently, and I did also one. So I did two recently, and it's completely different now when I look at feedback. I look at it, I go through it, and I understand how to go through it. So I'm gonna share with you a bit later on what to do about it. So feedback, in a nutshell, from my story, is very painful. And when I looked at my 360 feedback, this is what people told me. It was very negative, I would say. It wasn't really positive. But again, when you receive a negative and a positive thing, you really focus on negative most of the time. And that's what I see most people do. And it felt as if people are really criticizing me, at that time. So you're going to experience that. And as human beings, we don't like judgment. We don't like people to judge us, We like to be basically left as is. Because when people judge you, you had that urge that you want to change. And honestly, we as human beings don't like to change. And always remember change management, because the first thing about change management is communication, and people resist anything, whether it's self-assessment, whether it's self-awareness, whether it's anything, like even a new menu in a restaurant, people resist it in the beginning. So you will have to do good communication around it, and how this is the most important thing. Now, what will happen is, how can you cultivate self awareness over time؟ يعني شو لازم تسوي in this process? Just remember my story. Don't really dwell into your sadness or feelings. Go through it and get over it quickly. It's not the end of the world. Unless that self-assessment or self-awareness test has a completely different agenda behind it. But most of the time, that has been done because people are trying to develop you and make you better. So focus on a mindset where you want to basically make improvement from it. And what you need to do is go through it for one time and swallow it. You don't need to filter it, and you don't need to put labels around it. It's very difficult, we always love to label stuff. Anything we say, oh, that's beautiful. Oh, that's ugly. oh, people don't like me. We always like to put a label around stuff which we don't like or we like. So just go through it and no filter around it. And always have the mindset that really good things are coming to your way. So when you look at anything in life and then you look at it positively and say, listen, I know that good things would come from that. And something that I've learned is that appreciate that someone is giving you feedback. And I remember one time I was told, for those who gave you feedback, send them a thank you note. Very strange. But again, they said, you know what? These people took the time to give you feedback, good or not good. So it's always appreciated to go and tell them, thank you. And like I did, read it once, come back to it, leave it for the time being, just go and try to enjoy your life. I know it's going to be painful. Come to it tomorrow or the day after. Read it again. Now, what you need to do is journal around how you felt around it. Right? So you read it one, try to swallow it. It's painful. It's going to be painful, especially in the first time. But the more feedback sessions you do, the more you're going to be accustomed around how you take it or your reaction. Read it again. Leave it. Read it one more time. And then now journal around your feelings and what comes around that. So you do it a couple times until you feel it landed very well. Now, something that happened to me is if you want to make this process easy, hire a coach. It costs some money, okay? But hire a coach. I'm a coach, and I really know that it's something that is really powerful when you have it. And always remember, the first time is always painful. Any feedback you receive, it's very painful. The second, the third would land very easy. And as human beings, when we work, we always know, you say, yeah, you know what, now we're going to have, a process improvement cycle, and they come up with the Japanese methodologies on how we can have improvement cycles, etc. But when it comes to us and improving ourselves or anyone else, we don't do that anymore. We don't do that. It's like, it's completely different. It feels really personal. So again, what you do to improve the process is also applicable on you as a human being. Think of it as a reflection point. Anything you do, even a process, you come to it after a year because this is your reflection point where you come, okay, and you would say, okay, that's what I did. That's my feedback. That's what went well. What didn't go very well, and that's what I'm gonna do. And if I would bank on anything, 3 things I really think about when I go through any feedback or a self-awareness. The first thing I think of it is I'm really curious to grow. When I read it, I'm really curious because I really want to grow. I go through it. I want to improve it. I go and read about it more. I ask people because my intention is to grow, and that's what I want to do. The second thing is, what I do is I have people at work that I really trust. So what happens is I really have an agreement with them where during a meeting, if something goes not well, I have an agreement with them on what they can do to stop me. Or after the meeting, they would speak to me and say, Saeed, you've done this. So this is something that I always do. And the third thing is I journal. If I know that I went to a meeting and something didn't go very well, I journal about it. In addition to all the self-awareness and stuff, because this is something that I do all the time. And then I see what I would do about it in future meetings. And it really works very well. Not the first time, maybe the second or third time. It works very well. So self-awareness is something that I always bank on, and it's very important in your step to emotional intelligence and or empathy. If you really want to strengthen your emotional intelligence, the first thing you should do is work on your self-awareness and understand it. So that's it for today, and I would love to hear your self-awareness experience in the comments section. Share that with me, because this is how I can grow with you and learn more from your experiences in the comment sections in my channels. And as we end, I would like you to take care of yourself and those who you care about. And if you really find this episode, please share it and subscribe to my channels. You can find me on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify for now. مع السلامة.